Once upon a time, long, long ago, on the coast of Scotland, there was a castle. It had the main entrance, and it also had a secret entrance. At the back of the castle, there was a secret door with steps going down from the castle all the way to the beach. It was hardly ever used because most people didn't know about it. Nearby this castle, near the main entrance, on the moorland, there was a hill. That hill nobody ever went near because it was said to be a fairy hill. And all the people round there knew that you don't mess with the fairies. Don't go near where they live. Don't offend them in any way. Be careful to keep away from the fairy hill. Now, inside the castle, there were many staff. And there was a butler who was in charge of everybody. And there was, at this time, a young boy. He had just come to work in the castle, and he had to answer to the butler. And whenever he had a little bit of free time, that boy liked to go to the secret door and go down those steps and play on the beach. And the butler thought to himself, it's good for the boy to get some fresh air. Now, the butler also told the boy, you can play wherever you like, but don't go near the fairy hill. Do you understand? And the boy was curious about, is it really true that there are fairies? Is it really true that they live in that hill? And so one moonlit night, he woke up in the middle of the night and he saw the moon shining into his bedroom. And he knew that the full moon is a special time for fairies. And he thought, maybe tonight is the night I could go and visit them. So he crept out of where he slept, out of the room where he slept, and he made his way quietly through the castle, and he came to the secret door, and he went down those steps, and he hurried all the way up the beach, and then he turned left, and he went inland so that he came round behind the back of the fairy hill, and he could see it clearly in the moonlight. There was nobody around. When he came to the bottom of the fairy hill, he quietly crawled on his hands and feet to the very top, because he saw that there was a light coming out of the top of the hill. And when he looked down from the top of the hill over the edge, he could see that there was a big room inside the fairy hill, and there was a big table, and there was noise of music, fairy music. And he was so curious, he thought, I'm going to climb in and watch. So he climbed inside, and at first nobody noticed him, because he climbed inside and then stood back in the shadows and watched. All the fairies were sitting around in a great round ring round a table, and they were having a kind of feast, and they were singing and they were making speeches, and it was fascinating to the boy. And then one of them stood up and clapped his hands and said, now it's the time for the special toast. Bring the silver cup. Then two of the fairies got up and went to a cupboard and unlocked all the locks on that cupboard and brought out a silver cup. And then they began to pass it around. And the boy noticed that whatever was inside the cup changed according to what that particular fairy wanted to drink. Sometimes it was red wine, and sometimes it was white wine, and sometimes it was ale. Now, it had gone almost the full circle round when somebody said, "There's somebody else here." And the fairies lifted up their candles and they saw him. And then the one who had said, "Now it's time for the toast," said to the boy, "You are welcome. Come and join us." They made a space for him to sit down. He was quite a lot bigger than they were, but he sat down at the table and he was passed the cup. Now he knew that if you ever find yourself amongst fairies, you must not eat or drink a thing, or you will never get back into our world. But they passed him that cup, and they all were looking at him, and they said, "Drink, drink, drink the toast with us. Wish for whatever you want." And all their faces were lit up by the little fairy candles. And he, quick as lightning, he thought, "I can't drink anything. I have to get away. And it would be great to take this cup. How can I do it?" So this is what he did. He lifted the cup high in front of them all, and he said, "I wish to toast you all with water." And straight away that cup was filled with water, and then he threw it on all the candles and put them all out. And then he scrambled as fast as he could back up through the opening at the top of the hill, and he had the silver cup in his hand, and he ran down the outside of the hill, and he began to run towards the beach. And those fairies were furious, and they began to chase after him. He could hear them coming, but he had longer legs and he was ahead of them, and he ran and he ran and he ran, holding the silver cup until he got onto the beach. He got onto the beach and they were almost touching him. They were catching up behind him. And then from somewhere back in his mind, he remembered that fairies cannot cross water. They can't even go on the wet sand. So he ran down onto the wet sand where the sea was coming in, and they were screaming and they were shouting insults at him, and they were running along, but they could not go onto the wet sand. And so he got all the way down to where the castle was, and they stopped chasing him. And then he ran up those steps, and he got through the secret door and back quietly to his room and hid the silver cup under his pillow. And the fairies never did get that silver cup back. In fact, that young boy ended up being butler himself one day, and he knew that the fairies were real. And after that one night, he had some respect for them. He didn't want to cross them again. And he would warn everybody, "Don't go near the fairy hill. Don't go near the fairy hill." But what about the silver cup? Well, he kept it hidden until he got married. And when he married, it showed it to his wife. And when they had children, he showed it to their children and told them the story of the night that he went inside the fairy hill. And somewhere in Scotland, there's a cupboard or a shelf, and inside it sits that silver cup that once came from the fairies.